Welcome to the shed. I'm Syd, Mackie's on the camera, and today we are going to be learning how to true a wheel. Great, we're gonna lefty loose, we're gonna lefty tighty. No, we're gonna righty loosey. For this task, you will need either a truing stand or your bicycle plus a zip tie, a spoke wrench, and obviously your out of true wheel.
Why are you truing a wheel?
It's not true. What does that mean? It doesn't mean it was lying to you. It means that it is wobbly. Method one is gonna be the good old truing stand.
We'll show you guys a trick at the end for truing it without a truing stand, but all the same concepts apply, and it's a lot easier with a truing stand.
All right, so as you see, a wheel being out of true means it's got this little wobbly thing going on. You don't want that. So there are a couple ways to tell if this is going on. Often you can see it. Often you can feel it. What I've noticed is, especially on a mountain bike, you might not notice it on the trail, but when you come out on a paved road, you might have just this sort of weird wobbly feeling in the back. Why is it always the back? I can think of like twice in my life that I've had a non-true front wheel.
Because generally you smash the back into things more.
Okay. But you can definitely feel that wobble more on pavement or like a gravel path than you can on single track. Sometimes it's so bad that it's hitting the side of your bike and then it's really obvious because it's going. Now that almost everyone on a mountain bike uses disc brakes, it's a little less crucial because you can still use your brakes while your wheel is a little wobbly. It's like not as big of a deal.
Yeah, with rim brakes, you'd hear it go zzz, zzz,
Right.
zzz, zzz, and then also if it was really bad, then it would kind of pull your brakes while you were riding, and that's not good either.
Scary. Does it mess up your brake rotors eventually if it's super out of true? Like, does it make the rotors rub at a certain point or no?
Nope, the rotors are attached to the hub, which has nothing to do with the rim in this case.
That's true, because that's the spoke tension from the hub. Should we quickly go through the parts of a wheel?
Yes.
Just so that we're all on the same page. Got your tire. Got your rim. Got your spoke nipples. It is illegal to giggle when saying spoke nipple. Spoke nipple. Spoke nipple. Moving on. This is your spoke and your hub. So the trueness of your wheel is a factor of the tension that all of these spokes are holding on your rim. If it is even, say this spoke is equally tight as this one, then your wheel will be true for the most part.
That is fairly accurate, although it has less to do with across the wheel and more next to each other.
I guess I just meant like all the way around.
Okay,
like
yes.
In general, all the spokes. The goal is to have all the spokes exerting about the same amount of tension on the rim so that your rim is a circle. You might think like, oh, my wheel is wobbly because it has a dent or something else, but it is this sort of factor of the tension that all of these are pulling on it, which is why a rim is circular. So, logically, if our problem is imbalance in tension, we need to use our spoke wrench to adjust tension accordingly. And that's where it gets tricky because you have to decide which things to adjust. And I will not claim to be an expert at this. We are going to learn together.
If you are building wheels or if you're like a shop, you might have a spoke tension checker.
Yeah.
We do not have a spoke tension checker.
Most people don't.
Most people don't. So what we're gonna go for is the wheel not being wobbly and then count that as a successfully true wheel.
If you build your own wheels, I don't know what you're doing on this video. Hopefully you're enjoying yourself.
Okay, so it's definitely, what does that mean?
Hold on, let me think this out for a second. That to me probably means that the spokes in this section on this side are tighter than the spokes in this section on this side. I'm not quite sure which one's right.
Is it rubbing on most of the wheel and then there's a spot that doesn't rub, or is it not rubbing on most of the wheel and then there's a spot that does rub?
It is not rubbing on most of the wheel and it is rubbing in this spot
Generally, if there's one spot where it's rubbing, you assume that that is what is off and the rest is what is correct.
So I think for starters, because that's sort of the obvious situation, is we're gonna loosen the spokes, which is basically gonna be this guy and this guy.
So either you're going to loosen them or what?
Tighten the other ones on the other side.
Yeah.
How do you know?
So that's where a spoke tension checker comes in. But what I have found is that spokes make a noise like an instrument does. And so if you ping them, and you want to do it compared to ones on the same side.
Sounds a little flat. That was very different.
What are these two compared to other ones?
Same.
Okay, so if these
They're good.
are similar to these, where there's not an issue,
That's good.
that's probably good. So what does that mean then?
We need to start listening to the ones on the other side. Okay, so I'm sensing a problem here.
Okay.
So does it get, musically, does it get higher or lower when you tighten it?
Think about a ukulele.
Lower when you tighten it. Higher when you tighten it.
You have to decide. I'm not just going to tell
Sorry,
you.
if it's flat, you tighten it, so it gets higher when you tighten it. So
So-
this is loose, which doesn't really make sense.
Well, okay, so wait. If these ones are loose, what would happen when you tightened them?
Oh, that's good. That
Yeah.
means it would pull it this way.
So.
Okay, just from the top here, because I think we got a little muddled.
Yeah.
You use your truing stand to see where you're hitting, which in this case we had one spot that was hitting, so we knew like, okay, that's an issue. And so we know at this point that what we're doing is we're either loosening these guys.
Because those are the spokes on that side.
Exactly.
Yep.
Or we're tightening
The
this
spokes
one.
on the opposite
And so
side.
the way that we could tell is by listening to the sound that the spokes are making. We found that, see this one up here where it's not touching at all is making the same sound as these guys, which means these guys probably have the same tension logically like the strings of a ukulele or a guitar or any stringed instrument. If it sounds the same, it probably has the same tension on it, so we don't want to mess with those. Then we listen to this one, which does not sound so good.
And then based on what you know about what needs to happen with the rim there, does that make sense?
Yes, because
Okay.
that means that this needs to be tightened, which will
you're gonna
pull
tighten
that
which
way.
So that's what we want.
How do I know which one of these I'm going to use?
You just fit them on and see which one fits the tightest.
Okay. Righty tighty, lefty loosey, but upside down and backwards.
Why upside down and backwards?
Because it's screwing in like this.
So this
Or no,
is
it's screwing like
one
that.
of the most complicated things about
One of those times that
truing
righty
wheels.
tighty, lefty loosey just fails you. This is one of those times where I would get impatient and like just start loosening or tightening, which is why I've never done so good at this task in the past. And I think that's the beauty of making these videos, is I'm forced to figure out why I'm actually doing something as opposed to just like, ah!
Yeah. When you're working on a spoke at the bottom, you have to go the reverse of what you normally would. So counterclockwise is tighter, clockwise is looser. You're getting closer.
I like this musical aspect of it. Do you have any suggestions for anyone who is tone deaf?
No.
That's really close.
The other thing to be aware of is usually if there's one spoke, you want to check the spokes next to it also, and then go the other direction also.
So we're not touching anymore. That's excellent. This is where we were before,
Yeah.
so let's tighten that.
So looking at the gap there, it still gets really close right there.
So do we want to keep worrying about the part that's really close or the part that's far away?
Well, how much of the wheel is really close versus really far away?
Far away, far away, far away, getting closer, touching, far away. Yeah, I think you're right that the close is still the problem. Can you always go from this side, or do you sometimes have to like flip the wheel around?
No, so we will flip the wheel around and do the opposite side. But right now, since we have a spot that's touching on this side, we want to work on this side. Like we want to get that gone first. So the other thing is there is an aspect of as you tighten them, it won't necessarily pull the rim immediately. So you want to squeeze. You'll see people like,
Oh, yeah,
you'll
I've seen people do that. I didn't know what they were doing.
yeah, so you want to squeeze the spokes, which helps sort of even things out between them. It's hard.
My
Truing wheels is not easy.
Melting. Help me.
Why don't you flip the wheel around and check the other side? So the other thing you want to look for is like you want to watch the gap also. Right through there. There's a big gap.
There's a little dent in the
There's
wheel.
a dent. So that's what you have to be aware of is sometimes there's just a dent and you're probably not going to like be able to adjust a dent.
Just not worry about that.
Yeah, because you don't want to go and tighten all the spokes or loosen all the spokes to try to get rid of something that's caused by a dent instead. Same thing, you have a whole section that's rubbing.
Wrong spot. Okay, so this guy's way high.
Okay.
So we want to loosen.
Okay.
Ooh, we flip the wheel around. Does that change things?
Nope.
Great. We're gonna lefty loose. We're gonna lefty tighty. No, we're gonna righty loosey. Okay, that's significantly better. Yeah, so if we set it that tight, which again is better, but that means we've got a little bit of rubbing pretty much from there to there.
What I've usually found is if you have a longer section like that, or even just in general, you want to find the one that's in the middle and then do the ones on both sides of it as well. At least, like, you're doing at least 3 spokes every time. You're not like just focusing on one. Because if you just focus on one, you can get an even worse wobble.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think that's why people find this task so frustrating is you fix one thing and then it gets worse somewhere else. So which side do you reckon for this one?
I think the far side still needs to be tighter.
Okay.
And I'd probably do this one and maybe that one.
So you would recommend finding a spot and then tightening like 3 or 4 and seeing where you're at then?
Yeah, as opposed to just tightening or loosening one, do the one that you think's in the middle and then the 2 on the sides and see how it does. I mean, that definitely helped.
Way better.
And generally when you squeeze them, you want to squeeze 2 that are on the same side because then you're making sure that they aren't just caught on each other.
I feel like that didn't make things better.
Well, this section is better.
And that's what we did, wasn't
Yeah.
it? So we start having issues here.
And part of it is there's a little sticker right there.
Oh, yeah.
So that's going to make it slightly wider.
But I think we're still hitting before
Yeah,
that.
I would focus like here and here.
Okay, so tightening these again. It's very easy to lose track of which spoke you're on. Do you have any suggestions for that?
What I've seen people who are really good at this do, like our buddy Clay, is hold the spoke that you're working on. Like as you spin the wheel, spin it by holding the spoke.
Whoa, my arm's not long enough for that.
Well, and what I've seen with Clay is he usually just spins
back and forth,
just over a section.
Ooh, that's nice.
Okay, that's
Look
good,
at
that's
us.
good. But then there, it's still wider than it is when you get back to the other side.
So I should flip it over again.
I'd probably flip it over again, yeah.
Let's go all the way around first just to see what we're dealing with. Getting closer and...
It's time to keep working on that part. And generally when you're doing 3 or 4 at a time, you do the center ones the most and the edge ones less.
I think I actually kind of did that accidentally. Okay. Okay, well, we have a shorter...
So now what I would do is test the sounds of them again, because it may be that you need to actually loosen the closer side instead of tightening the other side. So what I'm hearing is from here to here.
Yeah.
So these 3. So I would loosen these 2 slightly and tighten that one a little bit. Right? Because all of that will push it that direction.
Yeah.
So you're loosening that one.
Yeah.
And that one. And tightening that one. It looks like a very consistent gap.
Like, I don't think this is a good perfectionist task without a spoke tensioner, but like if you step back, it looks great compared to what we started with. I'm pleased with the results.
You feel like you could ride down pavement with this and not be annoyed?
No, totally. I mean, probably could have 20 minutes ago, to be honest. So just to summarize what we did here on the TRUING stand, because you're going to do the same concept on the bike. We figured out where we were touching, and then we had to decide whether we wanted to loosen the spokes that were close to us on this side, or if we wanted to tighten and pull it that same direction. And decide which spokes we wanted to tighten or loosen, we listened to them and tried to decide which ones sounded off from their brethren on the same side. Instead of tightening or loosening just one spoke, picked one center spoke, tightened or loosened that the most, and then also did the same direction to the 2 spokes on the same side on either side of that spoke.
or chose one spoke and then did the opposite on the two spokes next to it. You never want to just adjust one spoke because it won't usually do anything, and you can just end up really, really tightening or really, really loosening one spoke. So you're always doing them in at least 3 at a time. So I don't think we should untrue the wheel because that seems stupid.
No, I don't think that's necessary. The concept is exactly the same, but the first thing you do need to decide which side you're going to put your zip tie on.
You can look at this little gap right here between the wheel and the frame, or the tire and the frame. And when you spin, you might be like, oh, look, it goes like zoop, zoop, zoop. So that's the side that you're going to want to do. And what you're going to do is you're going to attach the zip tie. So you basically line it up like this. And now you're using the distance between the zip tie and the rim as your like indicator.
Okay, let's see how we did. You could also do this with your bike upside down on the side of the trail.
The touring stand is obviously a little easier because you can see what you're doing better, and it is a more consistent measurement. Like, this can get bumped easily. However, in a pinch or just in a situation where you have a wheel that is out of true and you don't have a touring stand, we have used this method many times. You do exactly the same thing that we did with the touring stand. And this is how to true a wheel in 1 minute. Start by putting your wobbly wheel in a truing stand if you have one, or attaching a zip tie to your fork or chainstay of your bike. Spin the wheel and figure out where your wobble is coming from by looking for the spot where your rim rubs the indicator or zip tie. Next, decide if the same side spokes need to be loosened or the opposite side spokes need to be tightened. You can do this by plucking the spoke and comparing its sound to other spokes on the same side in an area that isn't rubbing. If it sounds significantly different, that is likely the spoke to adjust. To tighten the spoke, twist the spoke wrench counterclockwise. To loosen, twist clockwise. Note that this is the reverse of what you would think. When adjusting spokes, always adjust at least 3, the one at the point where it's rubbing, and the 2 immediately adjacent on either the same side or the opposite side of the wheel. Once you have trued that area, check for other rubbing spots. Make sure to check both sides of the wheel.